What makes a wonderful partner, and how do you get over past hurts, let go of a grudge, and forgive? We're talking about relationships and relationship issues next on Speak Your Mind. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps, licensed psychologist with the Human Development Center. Never play with the emotions of others because you may win the game, but the risk is that you will surely lose the person for a lifetime. My producer didn't write that. That is a quote from Mr. William Shakespeare, who wrote a thing or two about relationships. The topic we're discussing tonight with our experts and your help. And that's your cue to start calling in your questions right now. Locally, dial 218-788-2844 or call toll-free at 1-877-307-8762. And you can also email them using the address listed at the bottom of your screen. Let's meet our guests. Greg Anderson is a psychotherapist with the Human Development Center who specializes in couples counseling. And Joanne Fairfield was trained as a family therapist and has practiced both in the United Kingdom and the United States for the past several years at the Human Development Center. Thanks to both of you for coming here tonight. And I think a really good place for us to get started, because this is a show about mental health and mental illness and mental health related topics, is for us to spend a little time discussing why relationships, and in particular healthy relationships, are important for our mental health. And Greg, we'll have you start with that.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think good mental health is all about balance. Balance of our point of view, balance of feelings, balance, our physical balance plays a part in our good mental health. And then looking at relationships, I think they're all about balance too. I think good mental health is about functioning in ways that are balanced, functioning in ways that allow us to move about as freely as we can and to do the best we can with what we have as a person. And it seems to me that's the same quality that's crucial in a relationship as well, functioning. Flexibility might be another that is a very important quality for good mental health, but and also the same seems to be true for relationships, and I'm glad to be able to be a part of talking about both.
And Joanne, you know, this notion of this question of relationships being important to mental health, that always takes me back to this old study that Dr. Bowlby did way back in the day, where little baby monkeys were given the opportunity to be with the wire monkey that had food, or the soft cuddly contraption that had no food. Always chose the soft cuddly contraption, which just speaks to, I think, the importance of our attachment to human beings. And talk a little bit about that whole attachment. You as a family therapist.
Okay. Well, attachment is an old concept. It's been around a long time, and I think most of us know what it is without having to go to be trained. It's when we have a sense of connection with someone, and obviously, as you just suggested, with infants, that initial attachment, which we often call bonding, between the parent or the primary caregiver and that baby, is key in terms of the baby's initial development. They respond. We're reciprocal beings. So babies respond to the facial expressions. Babies respond to sound and warmth and connection. And that doesn't go away just as we get older. It becomes equally important when we're young children and we're moving out into the world, when we become teenagers and we want to be more of our own person. We build connection with the wider world at that point, which sometimes scares the parents. I'm a parent. I understand that. But equally, to get through those moments, we need connection with our partners. We need connection with our family. We need connection with friends. And because it's part of how we figure out who we are. And The other thing that I've noticed as a therapist is that when people become mentally ill or start to be sick and their mental health takes a downturn, often one of the first things to go is that sense of connection.
And this real social withdrawal that we see that is a part of a lot of different kinds of mental health problems, everything from depression to anxiety to even the more significant mental illness like we were talking about last week of schizophrenia. That withdrawal and detachment from people when we know that attachment is so important and vital to our own mental health.
It actually, I think some of the things that sometimes are left out when we're talking as therapists as mental health, we talk, I think, very well about the importance of family, but I think it's sometimes hard to engage the family. And I guess if I were to make a plea, it would be to make sure that families are as engaged as they can be without taking over for the patient. So, because the mental health of the identified patient affects the family. It affects family relations. It has a ripple effect that goes out a long, long ways. And the family are a really important part of being that recovery for the patient as well. So if we can engage and we can help them reconnect with the people who are important in their lives, then I think they've got a much better shot at making a good recovery.
And talk a little bit about what you've noticed too, just in your own work, Greg, in terms of that people's connectedness to other people, helping them in terms of their own well-being.
Well, I see people who come to me and they want help in their relationship, and I also want to kind of broaden the idea of family too, just a little bit, because I think family is much broader than maybe the people we live with or parents or it's the people in our community, it's the people we work with, it's the associations, the connections we have all over the place, and where we find our connection. And so what I find in people coming to see me and they have troubles in their relationship, I find that they have a disconnect. I ask them many times, I say, well, how much time do you actually spend together? And they might be spending, 20 minutes in a given day. I ask them what their habits are in terms of connecting with the people they might have, that they live with. They might have dinner in separate rooms. I'm encouraging people to pull together, to be a part of each other's lives, to talk, to chat. I don't mind that they argue. I encourage people to have conflicts. I think that's different than having fights.
Yes.
That's different than, I call it street fights versus arguments. But
so let's talk about that a little bit, because now we're getting into the kind of the meat and potatoes of this dinner time conversation, which is this sort of elements important in a relationship. And where does conflict, Joanne, where does conflict fall in terms of, is that a healthy part of, we often hear conflict is a healthy part of and normal for every relationship. And so set us straight, myth or fact on that one.
Conflict is an important part of any relationship. If you're not having conflict at some point in your relationship, you're probably not very well connected to the other person because you don't know where you differ. The issue is not about whether there's conflict, it's how you handle conflict and difference when it arises. And the times when it becomes potentially a fight is when people are threatened. Their own sense of self is threatened by the conflict. And so sometimes it helps to be able to talk to a third party like Greg to actually help you get to a place where you can actually deal with that. But conflict in itself is no harm. I was always taught as a systemic family therapist that difference is information. I know where my hand is in relation to this couch because I can feel the difference. between the couch and my hand. I need to know who I am in relation to my partner, not only by where we agree, but also where we disagree.
And to have the confidence that I can be in a relationship with you and still not agree with you on everything,
Yeah.
and where I feel comfortable and trust you well enough to tell you that I disagree with you.
Sure. Yeah. I want to, excuse me, I want to put in a vote for conflict as being a natural part of a relationship. There's a saying that says we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And so as long as there's like three of us here, we're going to have different perspectives, and it's really important that opportunity presents itself where we get to change, where we get to talk to each other about those different, and we'll be in conflict, we'll be in disagreement. Wonderful. The best thing about conflict is coming to a point of maybe not a solution, could be a solution, that would be wonderful, but some resolve. I have couples tell me that we fight a lot, so you don't have to worry about that, Greg. But I say,
They
well,
have conflict down.
yeah, that's right. They know that.
It's the resolution
got
piece
that.
that's a little rough.
Yeah, and they're fun to work with in a sense that you know where they are. They're speaking out their truth is, and they get a chance to mix with each other. They get a chance to make those connections. They maybe just in normal chatting about news, weather, and sports, they don't get a chance to do that.
Now, and by conflict, we're not talking, because you said we're not talking street fights, we're not talking abuse. Talk just a little bit about the notion of safety in a relationship, and that can mean physical safety, but also emotional safety. Joanne?
Well, I think if you have emotional safety, you're going to have physical safety. I think if you don't have physical safety, you're not going to have emotional safety. So I'll just say that at the outset. The issue with emotional safety is about the fear we all have from a long ways back, which is a fear of rejection, a fear of not being accepted for who we are. And often the biggest judges of us, that we're afraid of being judged by others, is ourselves. We judge ourselves. So it's having the willingness, not necessarily always the confidence right away. You get the confidence by being willing to risk that possibility within a relationship.
That possibility.
That possibility that they may not like that piece of you, that they may not understand that piece of you. And that goes to something I know that you've talked with me about before, Greg, which is that the issue of conversation, not in just the sense of talking, but conversation in the sense of sharing, being willing to not only share who you are, but also being willing to hear the other person explain who they are, and having a curiosity. I'll never forget the day you told me about that notion of curiosity, that there's a conversation that goes like this. When you first meet somebody, it's all, who are you? What do you like? Where do you like to go? What do you like to eat?
Wait a minute. Here, are you remembering this conversation?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I
Well,
do.
let's have Greg. Let's have Greg tell that part.
Well, let's see. There's a natural history to a relationship, as I see it. It all starts with meeting at the bus stop, I say sometimes. And we meet there long enough, and we, generally speaking, at the bus stop, we talk about the things, news, weather, and sports, maybe just the weather. And then we move on. We move into a kind of a natural part of evolution. Of if we both want to go there, we'll go into a stage where, we know a little bit about each other, and then we might see in each other something different, like, you remind me of someone I know. And even past that, as we move farther into the natural history of a relationship, we might see the person as being very, very different than anyone I know. And that's only because a lot of things have happened from the beginning, from the very beginning of just being acquainted to where they are at that point. Things like the development of trust, development of the willingness, like you were talking about, the willingness to connect, to say some things, to open up a little bit, just the awareness of self. So that is on the way that is, those kinds of stages are on the way toward friendship. As I say it, it's small f friendship moves to a little larger case friendship and so forth. But and then I think in the ultimate or the
so that is the
end.
degrees of safety
They are.
that I feel a little safe in the beginning and then more a little bit
That's
more
right.
safe and then a little bit more safe. Here's a woman from Duluth who called in to say, well, what if you're a quiet person and you kind of don't say much anyway, and then putting yourself out there isn't in your comfort zone? What do you do? Joanne.
To be honest with you, I think one of the people who are most welcome in most places in terms of developing relation are the people she's describing herself as. Somebody who's willing to listen, somebody who's willing to pay attention to the other person. I think what makes it hard sometimes, though, when it's a shyness kind of factor that becomes like an anxiety and debilitating, is it sounds simple, and I know it's hard, but to really focus on the other person, to take yourself out of your zone and really focus and have a curiosity about the other so that you're not so focused on who you are and how you're being perceived.
So that we were talking about safety, we were talking about how does she feel safe in this. Let's talk about some of the other important elements I think that come up over and over again in relationships. Trust, and then which is sort of a byproduct of safety, but
Yes.
trust and mistrust and jealousies.
Yes. I want to say this about trust. I don't think trust is ever earned. That sometimes goes against a popular belief. But it just sort of strikes me that trust is something that we have in unlimited quantity. Each of us has unlimited ability to give trust. We also have the ability to take away trust. I don't see it as being earned. That would be someone saying to me, what does it take to earn your trust? And I would give that person 5 things you need to do to earn my trust. And then when that person does that, they say, okay, divvy up, give me your trust. First of all, I don't think it's earned. It is given as a gift, and it's a wonderful gift. I think it's
freely from the heart.
Yes, yeah. No strings attached.
Can I interject there? I think that's the place where a lot of relationships start. I think when conflict arises that is not get resolved, it's at that point when people feel like that trust has been abused, that they then pull back. And that's when people find it hard to move forward because they feel like that opportunity that was there has somehow or other put them at risk.
Yes.
And so they protect themselves in all kinds of ways. People protect themselves by holding on to resentments. People protect themselves by not engaging in any form of resolution because they don't believe it's possible or safe to go there. People withdraw themselves by a lack of interest, a passive kind of withdrawal, if you like. And then in that respect, I think there is an issue, and this is where you and I will have a conflict, a difference, is that I think at that point then there is an issue about how trust, mainly be the earned isn't the right word, but how it is reestablished.
Yes.
And
I want to put in a plug for something that I think is crucial in a relationship, and that's that we would nurture each other, that we would give each other something of ourselves that the other person can use. That what can I take out of your way today? What can I give to you? How can I water this plant? How can I feed it in just the way what it needs? I see that as crucial, and I really see that as solving a lot of problems in terms of when trust gets wounded, nurture can come and help heal.
So if I have a sense that you've broken my trust,
Yeah.
I am to nurture you?
I would say he has to nurture
you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to say that I should just kind of ignore.
Now that doesn't earn your trust. just because I nurture you, but it
But
it's sort of-
it is that actions speak louder than words.
Yes.
Right? The notion that it is a way of reestablishing that sense of trust. And so, and that gets at, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, how do we learn to let go?
That's a
how
parental thing
do-
as well as a parent.
How do we learn to let go? How do we learn to forgive? Yes, Joanne, the queen of mindfulness.
Well, we first have to own what we're feeling in the first instance. And I will speak on a personal level that I back in the day, I was the queen of anger. I could
You weren't the queen of letting go, you were the queen of anger.
I was the queen of
Yes,
anger.
okay.
I could convert any emotion you wanted into anger. And the one that was of choice to convert was usually fear or anxiety. And the reason for that was because fear or anxiety made me feel more vulnerable. So we talk about secondary emotions in our business. So anger was a very immediate secondary emotion, so immediate that I almost didn't recognize that I was anxious. So I'd be angry. I would be afraid because my kid was late coming home, okay? And I'd be worried about something that happened to them. And then they get even later. And then the worry would turn into anger. And then it would turn into anger combined with worry, which would be something like this: they'd better get home now or I'll kill them.
Right.
10 minutes earlier, I was worried that whether I should call the hospital or not. But when my kids came home and they were late, what would happen is all they'd be in touch with was my anger. They wouldn't necessarily be able to hear my anxiety. And that's why I say, in mindfully, to be aware yourself first of what it is you're really feeling and accept the feeling that you have. Because if you can't accept it, then you can't actually present it to somebody else, and they're not going to be able to respond. They'll respond, in my case, to my anger, not to my anxiety, and that's a very different response.
You can't let go of what you're not owning in the first place.
Exactly.
right.
So that is step number one. Now we do have some questions here.
okay.
I do want to
Okay.
get, and I'm going to start with you on this one, even though you're going to say, why are you starting with me on this one? Sue from Superior said, can you address mother-daughter conflicts and relationships?
Yeah, why are you asking me that question?
Because you
Yeah,
see
okay,
mothers
yes.
and you see daughters, and I know you have daughters, and so
yes.
who have a mother. So my guess
certainly.
is that you've witnessed a couple things also.
How to address mother-daughter conflicts? Wow. I suppose that would be number one. Somebody's got to listen, and listen not just for what's being said, but what's being felt, and what's perhaps being needed at the time. And I'm thinking that dependent on the age of the daughter, it could fall to the mother, perhaps the adult in that case. But if it's not that case, then it'll have to fall to one of the two, to be able to listen very carefully in that way, that very special way. In addition to that, it would be being very careful to make sure that what you hear is really being said, and that reflects on what I said earlier. We don't always see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. So my own awareness of myself in terms of that conflict, I have to be really aware of what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to do with my child? That would be some ideas I'd have.
Well, and you mentioned in the course of answering this notion of, and I'm going to not say it the way you said it, but that old adage that we can only be as healthy in relationships, I can only love somebody else to the degree that I love myself. Joanne, comment on that.
I would paraphrase it slightly differently and say we can only be open to knowing another person as much as we're willing to be open and know and acknowledge ourselves.
Oh, I like that even better.
And I think that the piece with, I don't think it's better if we can get both of them. I am a mother and a daughter, and yeah.
You are.
I'm the middle one of a middle one of a middle one. If you can both have a willingness to try and not necessarily get it right, a willingness to accept that you don't agree, because we're back to conflict is normal in relationships, that you won't always agree, contrary to...
And that you
know,
don't have to.
And you don't have to for your relationship to be valid and important. And in fact, part of the joy of being a parent, and it's taken me a long time to get there, and I'm not completely there, is actually seeing your kids become completely their own individuals. And that they're not just a reflection of how good, bad, or indifferent a parent I am.
We are nearly at the end. What is the takeaway message that you would like people to have, Greg, from the show on relationships?
I think that in regard to conflict, having conflict, it would be very important. It would be kind of an extra benefit for people who get into conflict and who are together quite a bit to come to an agreement about things they will always do when they're in conflict and things they'll never do when they're in conflict. To have that agreement sort of keeps them on the road.
And Joanne, very briefly.
I would echo exactly what Greg was saying. To have some ground rules that you both agree on, even if the content is different between you.
This is exactly what Leo Tolstoy said in his book Anna Karenina, when he made the point that we cannot find happiness at the expense of other people's pain. That's what we've been talking about, and sort of is the essence, right? The essence of a healthy relationship. Thanks for joining us tonight. And don't forget to visit us on the web at speakyourmindonline.org, where you can find a schedule of our topics and resource links, and read my blogs, the place where I answer more of your questions. And you can email us questions about next week's show, when we'll be talking about postpartum mental health and mental illness. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps. Thanks for watching, and good night.